Hit me.
From Studio P in Sausalito, the home of the hit, it's time for...
Succotash.
Yes, Succotash, the Comedy Soundcast Soundcast featuring snippets from comedy...
Soundcasts.
And also interviews with comedians, comedian soundcasters, and other showbiz folk. And now, here's your host, internationally recognized Comedy Soundcast Soundcaster, Marc Hershon.
Well, howdy, Soundcast aficionados. You must be a fan of Soundcasts if you're dropping in for yet another installment of Succotash, the Comedy Soundcast Soundcast. Because that's all we do around here is pay homage to Soundcasts. We play clips from them, we talk about them, and sometimes we even talk to the people who are on those Soundcasts, like today, but deary me, I am getting ahead of myself. Myself being one Marc Hershon, your every other weekly host of Succotash, and this is episode 344. We're about 5 weeks away from hitting our 12-year anniversary of this show. Can you feel the excitement, the electricity in the air? Of course you can. If you'd like to send me and your co-host Tyson a little congratulations or salutations message in the next couple of weeks so we can include it in our 12th anniversary episode, well, we encourage that. The easiest way would probably be to kick out something in your socials to the attention of @Succotash Show. We'll see it, we'll harvest it, and we'll say it. You can also email us at either marc@succotashshow.com or tyson@succotashshow.com. You can also call into our Succotash and Runaway Truck Ramp hotline at 818-921-7212 and leave us a voice message. Or if you're feeling particularly production-y, you can record something and upload it as an MP3 file to hightail.com/u/succotash. We'll play or read everything that comes in. Now, we haven't set the actual date in April yet, but as long as your submission reaches us by the beginning of April, it's in. All right, let's get back to the here and now, or rather, the last week and now. Tyson hosted episode 343 and featured a Valentine's Day slate of 3 Soundcast clips, including Life is Short with Justin Long, CineNation, and High Low with Emrata. You can still avail yourself of those delectable tidbits wherever you normally get your Soundcasts from, or pop over to our home site, succotashshow.com, which is also the home for our nearly 12 years of episode archives. Which now brings us up to present day, and what I have in store for you, which is a guest. It's likely no surprise if you were able to read the title for this week's installment, Succotash Epi344 with special guest, Josh Gilliland. The soundcaster and actual practicing attorney, Josh hosts the Legal Geeks Soundcast, where he and Jessica Mederson, along with a rotating cast of other legal eagles, tackle the important fictional cases of our time. Josh was a guest at one of our rare live shows about 5 years back when Succotash appeared as part of San Francisco Sketchfest. He's also brother of another friend of the show and past guest Gabriel Diani. In addition, he's a skipper in the Sea Scouts, which is kind of like a Boy or Girl Scouts on the water. We'll talk about all that and the Soundcast and all the other stuff that he's up to in just a moment. The only thing keeping us from hearing my chat with Josh at this moment is this commercial from our friends at Henderson's Pants and their bright and shiny pedestrian pants.
Oh, la 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 la. Another innocent pedestrian, another inattentive driver, another senseless death on another crowded city street. Looks like someone wasn't wearing his Henderson's pedestrian pants, the only pants that tell oncoming traffic, please don't hit me. Hello, friends. Bill Haywatt here, and if you're like me, you've probably realized that the simple act of trying to walk from point A to point B in downtown America has become a little like going 10 rounds with Mike Tyson. Chances are, you're eventually gonna get hit, and why wouldn't you, with so many drivers using their valuable time behind the wheel to shave, eat lunch, or check in with their good friends on social media? Who in the heck has time to watch where they're going anymore? Not me. And that's why Henderson's has come to the rescue. With pants so iridescently bright, they instantly turn a potentially deadly intersection into a cone zone crosswalk of a discriminating fashion runway. With Henderson's pedestrian pants, even folks who are asleep at the wheel or vying for their city's DUI record will see you coming from blocks away with colors like radioactive isotope green, volcanic pumpkin vomit orange, and bladder infection yellow. But stylish color options are only part of the magic of Henderson's pedestrian pants. Built into the protective heat-resistant lining of these beauties are over 10,000 watts of flexible Klieg light strips that will illuminate your legs like a Broadway marquee. Nothing says, "See me coming," like a pair of Henderson's pedestrian pants. Originally designed for the Rockettes of Radio City Music Hall, dirt track race car drivers, and power-walking narcissists with a taste for the bizarre, Henderson's pedestrian pants are available at your local all-occasion security barn and wherever used traffic flares are sold. That's Henderson's, makers of potentially life-saving outerwear since 1911. And now back to Succotash.
Joining me is Josh Gilliland, who's been on the show before. And Moss, you were at a couple of years ago, or no, God, it's been 5 years ago at Sketchfest.
That's wild to think about.
I know, with Matt Weinhold and Mark Pitta and Joe Polino, my producer. That was because that picture just showed up on Facebook a few weeks ago, and we were all retweeting it or re-sharing it with each other, which was great. Anyway, Josh, welcome to the show as yourself by yourself.
Thank you for having me. It's so nice to actually see you and catch up.
Yes. I was on Josh's podcast, The Legal Geeks, this past, 3 or 4 months ago, I guess, when the She-Hulk episode 5 had aired. And you had me on as a expert witness for trademark filings and registrations and whatnot, given my history. Let's talk about your soundcast, as we call them here on Succotash, for a bit, because I'm still endlessly fascinated with the fact you are a real lawyer practicing real law, and yet your avocation for the legal geeks is just something that's just amazingly fascinating to me. And it's just kind of encapsulate exactly sort of what the essence of your show is about.
The Legal Geeks is about using pop culture to explain the law, because there are a lot of, this should not be a surprise, but young people who read comic books and like Star Wars grow up and become judges and everything in between. So we have lots of lawyers who like to blog or podcast, and we will watch a TV show or a movie and discuss the legal issues in it. It's really hard to turn your brain off after you've gone through law school, because you start analyzing everything, and it's really bad with lawyer shows. So like, that's painful for me to watch. I can't watch lawyer TV shows without needing high blood pressure medicine. But whether it's one of the Marvel shows or one of the many Star Wars shows or Star Trek, we're able to talk about legal issues from it. One of our San Diego Comic-Con panels this past year was about organized crime in Star Wars. And that let us talk about animated series and live action, and being able to take a deep dive into different issues. And we had lawyers and judges, including one judge from the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals.
Wow.
Yeah, John Owens.
That's a heavy hitter.
Yes. And, grew up loving this stuff. And so we do cover a spectrum. There are judges who have Star Wars toys in their chambers. Like, when you spend all day dealing with complex, difficult issues, it's nice to have things that anchor you, that make you happy, because there are times we deal with lots of stressful things, and that can just take a toll.
Sure.
But being able to come home and go like, we have Bad Batch starting, and 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 you have middle-aged guys and gals watching a Star Wars animated series to identify legal issues in it. And it sustains us, and it creates a community, because it goes back to like nerd culture. Like I really enjoy the founding of Comic-Con, or there's a wonderful documentary about the first Star Trek convention in the Bay Area called Back to Space Con. And we owe such a debt to those fans in the 70s who kept the lights on when there was kind of the wilderness period, that there wasn't a lot of good stuff until Star Wars came out. And sure, you had Silent Running and other kind of esoteric Dark Star and other like hard, deep sci-fi, but like we were kind of in the back of the room.
Yeah.
And they were going to events with people who like similar things, and they had a rip-roaring good time, and we wouldn't be here 50 years later without them.
Yeah.
So I'm very appreciative, and
That's
over
a good
that
point.
time, people have read those comics, whether it was Walt Simonson's run on Thor, and grew up and became lawyers, and like I'm in that category.
So one of the, is it an offshoot to the Soundcast that you guys have done these mock trials?
Yeah.
Various conventions. So give us an example of kind of one of the mock trials you guys have done, because you really get into it. There's costumes, and it's really done very, I'll say, legitimately. But
we treat it seriously and with love and respect. So the first one we did was at San Diego Comic Fest, and it was the trial of the Winter Soldier. Pulling from after Captain America, the Winter Soldier, being able to go, how would you prosecute Bucky Barnes and how would you defend him? And we did it we had a federal judge, we had law students, and it was fantastic. And we had psychologists to give expert testimony on whether or not Bucky understood the wrongfulness of his actions. And like seeing 10-year-olds sit in rapture, listening to a psychologist talk about whether or not he understood what he was doing. There's this wonderful feeling of I've won. I've got them to embrace learning. They care. They want to know how the law works. That was the first. How
did it come out?
Hung jury. Now
hung jury. Okay.
I did, one person was holding out. All the other jurors were on board with acquitting, and I didn't realize it at the time. But the gentleman who ended up that I asked to participate, who ended up as the jury foreman, was the administrator of the Kirby estate. And I felt pretty silly afterwards. And that dude owned it. He was really engaged. But we did one on how to prove the actual innocence of Luke Cage. After the Luke Cage series, we did one that was a competency hearing for Frankenstein's creature.
Wow.
That was fascinating to get into. And we used the 1931 movie as little Maria getting tossed in the lake, but also the factual background of Dr. Frankenstein keeps the creature in darkness without stimuli. It's like he's a newborn. That was your plan. Not Dad of the Year. So we did the court martial of Poe Dameron for getting everyone killed in The Last Jedi.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And that was lightning in a bottle when we did it, because it was when The Last Jedi was like a hot topic. And we had standing room only at San Diego Comic-Con. We had cosplayers who played Leia and Poe. One of the mothers of one of the lawyers is like an art teacher and big into costumes. So all the lawyers had resistance uniforms. So we did it like a court martial would be done.
Nice.
And so somebody was live tweeting it. So we were getting lots of action on Twitter. Pablo Hidalgo from Lucasfilm and Ryan Johnson. And Oscar Isaac did an interview sometime later and talked about us saying nice things.
Oh,
so that's the high water mark.
nice.
But one of my favorites was we did the stormtroopers suing for defective body armor. that was the most legally complex but fun. And this past summer we did the Jaws mock trial. The lawsuit against the town, specifically for Alex Kittner's death. And super fun. Like we treated it all seriously.
Well, you have to.
It's like we treat it seriously, but we all did it like it was 1976. So like we all got 70s clothes to look the part of it was 1976. So
you guys are having way too much fun with this stuff. Way too much fun for lawyers. For lawyers.
We do have a reputation of like having had our fun removed, and contrary to popular belief, we don't exchange jokes in Latin. We, it's just we don't. But like that's not how we roll. And like every human being needs a creative outlet. Everyone wants a sense of community.
Yeah,
and it's nice to have that when we do Comic-Con panels.
Well, so we don't leave them out. Why don't you mention some of the folks involved in your soundcast, because you've got a co-host.
Yeah. So Jessica Meterson and I started the Legal Geeks back in July of 2012. So we just had our 10th anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And we have quite the firm now, in air quotes, with lots of lawyers who come from different backgrounds. I know I'm going to forget someone, but they include like a really good friend from law school named Michael Dennis. He and his wife practice in Modesto, California. We have a lawyer in Pennsylvania named Thomas Harper, who's Army JAG officer now with the International Red Cross. So he does webinars talking about law of war and using pop culture. So he's actually got a job doing what we do for fun. There's an assistant U.S. attorney down in San Diego named Steve Chu, who's a very close friend. Like we met in organizing one of our law school student mock trials, and it was right after Rogue One came out. And I said, I really, we had just met. I said, I really, really want to make a costume for one of the Rebel Fleet troopers, the black vest and the helmet. Yeah. And from his pocket, he pulled out a Rebel Fleet trooper. And I thought, did we just become best friends? Like, what are they? That's in the display case behind me now.
Oh, that's funny.
His wife, Kathy, who is with the San Diego City Attorney's Office, amazing attorney. She's brilliant and highly effective. We have a professor at Hastings, Stephen Tullifield, who went to law school with Kathy and Steve. He's fantastic. We have Gabby Martin, who's just moved to Boston. She was in Connecticut. I know I'm forgetting people, but there are the judges.
That's quite a roster of legal minds,
and people have different areas of focus. So, you get the folks who might love Star Wars the most, or they might love Marvel the most, or might like Star Trek more. And contrary to popular belief, it's not Star Wars or Star Trek. The people can be fans of both.
Sure.
And a lot of us are. So yeah, it's a nice mix and really good friends. It's a nice sense of community.
Well, let's step back a little bit from sort of in time to before 2012 when you started the Soundcast. what were you doing, and what sort of led up to this, to the brainstorm to do a show about it?
Genesis. So, my career as an attorney's been interesting because I graduated 2001. So while waiting for bar results, September 11th happened.
Ooh.
And a legal recession kicked in prior to bar results coming out.
Oh boy.
So I was waiting to find out if I passed the bar while 100-year-old law firms were dying. Like, that was a very terrifying time to start my career.
Oh, bad.
So like, rough launch. After doing lots of, worked at a firm for a while and did contract work, I learned e-discovery software. All lawsuits have data now. Unless you have someone who's living in 1985, they're going to have a email account. They're going to. So there's software for collecting that information and reviewing that information. And I got good using one of those programs and went to go work for one of those companies in 2006. While there, I started doing lots of presentations. I did 80 in a year, traveling the country. I went to 37 states and started doing lots of webinars. And I got good at that sort of thing. I then launched a blog called Bowtie Law, where I focus on legal issues with electronic discovery. So that's blog one. It also makes me super easy to shop for at Christmas time and birthdays.
The bow tie thing, sure.
Yeah, it's just I have
How
like
many bow ties do you suppose you have at this point?
around 80.
Okay.
So anyway, go there. And I've been blogging for a couple years at this point, and I'm getting interested in the idea of like, how do I do something with pop culture? And I always had a wit with a lot of those blog posts on Bowtie Law. And there was a judge in DC that did an opinion where he referenced himself being, it's high noon and I'm Gary Cooper. So I did a post about that opinion with a whole bunch of cowboy references.
Okay.
And classics, including Blazing Saddles, because I'm a man of culture. And Jessica retweeted that, and we started messaging back and forth. And I raised the idea, hey, why don't we do a podcast and blog together, and we can alternate, and let's give that a try. She's realized, oh, you actually are serious. We started, and it was just part of that creative outlook. Because again, Star Wars kid, Star Trek kid, boxes of comics, and while doing the blog, I started collecting action figures again for blog posts. So I have a light box. I set up cameras and take pictures and then edit, because I'm uncomfortable with screenshots. Even though there's a really good fair use argument, and some TV shows will put out images for people to use, it just makes me a little uncomfortable. So I will set up, I'll get action figures for a particular show because they have schedules that can work with me, and take pictures and then edit and then post. And I have model friends that I've done that with t-shirts, but that's just, then you're trying to work with another human being's schedule, and that can be hard. But as
have you done any of your action figure, I'll call them tableaus, perhaps, in terms of setting up your shots? But have you taken the shots and tried to feed them through an AI graphic program?
No, I won't.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I will do it myself.
Interesting. Okay.
I kind of feel strongly that way.
Jury's still out on the AI thing.
Mixed feelings. There's whenever new tech comes along, there are those who overly embrace it and make over the top predictions, and then those who ignore it. So a couple examples. Thomas Edison took the position that when like movies started coming out, that libraries would cease to exist. It's like, we still got books, dude.
Yeah.
As opposed to those who go like, who would want a TV set in their house? Like, which is like others who would just like completely miss the boat.
Yeah.
It's like, going for the, I'm going to dig in because I just want to ride my horse to work. I will send telegrams. Like, you get folks like that. And, like what normally pans out is something in the middle. That we have documentaries, you get books on tape or recordings, but people still want to have a book and read it.
Yeah.
And there are those who are comfortable reading it on a tablet of some kind, but books aren't going away.
Yeah.
If I remember right, there's a Socrates quote about against written language, saying it would make people feeble in the mind. It's like, we wouldn't know about Socrates without books and somebody writing down he existed.
Yes.
So
I love the people who claim absolutes about anything. There was a guy who was the I forget what his actual position was, but he was in charge of the trademark office in 1929, the patent and trademark office, and he proclaimed that it would soon close because there were no more trademarks to be made. Everyone thought of every name that could ever exist for a product in 1929.
Good call.
Yeah.
Good call.
Exactly.
Just don't do that. Like, there's always going to be somebody smarter. Always somebody will come up with something new or a spin on something that's existed for a long time. Like, remember, over a decade ago, like mocking Netflix's subscription model for sending DVDs through the mail, and it's like, oh, it's going to go out of business. It didn't.
Yeah.
It changed. And like, always respect the fact that there can be change and innovation.
Absolutely. Sort of going back a little further now, getting back to sort of where I met you in passing, but I met your brother, Gabriel Diani, who's been a guest on this show before. And at a point in time, the two of you were associated through your mother's ownership of Rooster T. Feathers, a comedy club in Sunnyvale, California. Which is still in operation today. Just reopened following COVID, and a massive remodel, apparently, according to current owner Heather Barbieri. But back in the day, Gabe was part of a sketch comedy group out of San Francisco State, and for some reason, I'm not exactly sure. I do know why exactly. I know exactly why. One of his castmates was in my house improv group at Cobb's Comedy Club.
Okay.
Cole Stratton.
Good dude.
And Cole was also in Totally False People, the sketch group that your brother was in. And your mother was kind enough to book us 1 week a month for, I think, a year. And they would open for the improv group. And it was phenomenal. I'd never heard of an improv group getting to headline that much anywhere. But you grew up, at least at part of that time, in that environment, in that comedy club environment. And I have to believe that helped to infuse some of your performance desire.
Yeah. I mean, I've always been a ham, so I have enjoyed that. And there are a few things to unpack. First, my mother was a saint, and I miss her greatly. Few human beings go, hey, my kid wants to do comedy, So I'll buy a comedy
Comedy
club.
club. Exactly.
That was my mom. And that's how we met Matt Weinhold and
Yeah.
a whole bunch of other wonderful people from that time period. That happened while I was in college,
Okay.
freshman in college. And I do miss Roosters, and I do need to go back. I was trying to do an annual pilgrimage, but it is kind of like visiting the place you grew up and your family no longer lives there. So there is that feel to it. But deep respect and love for live comedy, and great love for my mother. However, if you look at old pictures of me, I did have the Gilliland half the family of carrying a camera with me. That's a trend that I think came from my paternal grandfather, because he had lots of great photos from his adventures. And then I had a cousin who made surfing movies, who was world famous in that regard.
Oh, wow.
And Sonny Miller, and also miss him. And I'm definitely a fusion of all the influences from different family and opportunities over my life that have made me what I am.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had mentioned before we started recording, I actually texted Gabe to give me a couple of tidbits to ask you about. And he said your grandfather actually worked on Amelia Earhart's crew.
He was in charge of the fuel system. So in the 80s, Papa was interviewed for a couple books and did some panels. I think it's AE The Final Story is one of them. I'm not sure what the other was. So his first name was Harold.
Okay.
And he hated that name. So he went by Gil.
Oh, okay.
Highlighting irony or just strangeness, maternal grandmother was named Velma. Hated that name. Her maiden name was Putbreeze, so she was called Putt, and she also liked to golf. So I had two grandparents that hated their given name and went with nicknames based upon their last name.
Funny.
So, but Papa, he was in charge of Nighttime B-17 production at Burbank. He was on the Poseidon and Polaris missile program for a decade, perfected the guidance system. So, when you think of the Cold War, it's not just like those who served. You had those in the defense industry that were like quasi-military, making the systems that preserved peace so we didn't end up radioactive slag. And he had a huge role in that. And, peace through deterrence.
Wow.
So, yeah, but yeah, Gabe's right. Yeah, he had a private line at the house because Howard Hughes liked to call it odd hours.
What?
Yeah, my grandmother hated Hughes because he would call it 2 a.m. or like, Christmas Day during dinner. Like he was, again, an odd man.
And what would he call about? Do you know?
I don't. So my grandfather was tight-lipped and never talked about it. I learned that from my dad.
Oh.
And I was like, kind of buried the lead. You waited for me to be in my 40s before you mentioned that. Like that was so there was that. Yeah, he was a fascinating human being, just born in 1912, of that generation that came up with aviation.
Yeah.
Helped save the world from fascism, and then did his part against communism. And at the time during Burbank, his sister-in-law, so my granddad, was Walt Disney's personal secretary.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Wow.
And Disney Studios and Lockheed and Burbank were kind of close to each other. So he would take the engineers from the Skunk Works over to have lunch with the animators because they were also good at keeping secrets.
So you've got like primordial geek culture in your DNA.
Yeah. There's.
It's kind of where, I mean, if you think of those things sort of combining and fusing and mixing together.
Oh, it's just love of airplanes, boats, just, and again, I was almost 3 when Star Wars came out. Gabe was born a week afterwards.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But I remember it because it was in the theaters for a year.
Sure.
My mother took me to Empire opening weekend when I was 5.
Gabe said, ask him about going to see Empire Strikes Back, but didn't go any deeper than that. So now you're getting us there. So good.
One of the Century Theaters in San Jose, which were the big dome ones.
Oh, yeah.
And so it was before my mom went off to paramedic school.
Okay.
And I had just survived spinal meningitis like the months before. So, and my parents just got divorced. So it was like a very country western horrible period. And so we're in the parking lot sitting on a blanket as cars were going up around everyone and like the massive line. And I remember getting into the theater and there was licorice and popcorn and a soda. And as my mother described it, my feet went to the end of the seat. And like it was just my little willpower to make sure it didn't close up on me.
Adorable.
She said as soon as the movie started, I didn't move or blink for the entire runtime of the movie. It's one of the happiest memories of my childhood, with an adventure with my mother. When I think of her, I actually heavily associate Star Wars with her.
Interesting.
And I'm grateful that there are parents today able to have those type of experiences with their kids.
Yeah, that's interesting. This was a while ago now, but I took my then 3-year-old granddaughter to see, they had a special release. This is not Star Wars related, by the way. They had a special release of Wizard of Oz. They had rendered it in 3D.
Oh my.
And she was 3 years old. I took her and her mother to see it in San Francisco. This was 10 years ago. And they had a child seat for her to sit in because she was 3, but she'd watched all these scenes on YouTube of Wizard of Oz. So she loved the movie, she loved the music, but she'd never seen the entire thing together. And so she's sitting there with her little child-sized 3D glasses on, and she was just like you. She did not move a muscle the entire time, just fascinating. This is really kind of her first movie theater experience, and she's seeing Wizard of Oz in 3D.
That's glorious. I've never seen it in the theater because it was just on annually. And it's amazing the experiences families can have, or whether it's friends. But again, generally that's the sort of family moment that's etched into memory in a very positive way that helps define lifetimes. And it's wonderful to see that.
My Empire Strikes Back experience was a little different because I'm a bit older than you.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, I saw Star Wars in the theater 12 times.
God bless you.
And
awesome.
I remember I was working at KSFO radio at the time. I was an assistant in the newsroom, and I was producing the morning show with Gene Nelson.
Oh, so good. Awesome.
And we got this slick press thing. It was like a 12-page document about this movie coming out, Star Wars. And there were just some stills, some set stills. And I was always been a huge sci-fi fan. And I remember Bob Wilkins on Creature Feature playing the first trailer, which was just the space explosion. And that was it, just the space explosion in the title, Star Wars. And I got so excited. And then this thing showed up and I just took it. It showed up at the station. And there was a picture of like one of the pictures I remember distinctly was a stormtrooper in the desert with a dewback behind him in the shot. And I'm going, what is this? We've never seen anything like this at all. So I saw it. And then The Empire Strikes Back, I saw it, of course, as I do most blockbuster movies, even today, the night before it officially opens. You know, you can go Thursday night and not have to wait till Friday. And I went and saw the first showing, and I went the next night. I'm going to go see it again. And I was at a theater in Marin County, and some dude drives by, and people are lined up around the theater, goes, "Darth Vader is Luke's dad."
No, like, no.
Yes. Yes. If you can imagine, the movie had just officially opened.
Such a horrible person.
Yeah.
Because I remember that moment, the shrieks of terror in the theater. It was the perfect surprise, just that groundswell of raw emotion.
Yeah.
And the fact that Lucasfilm has been able to pull it off a couple more times with Grogu, Baby Yoda, and then with Luke at the end of Mando season 2, like, you know, the reaction videos of people watching it for the first time losing their minds.
Oh yeah.
It's like they kept the surprise.
Yes.
That's so hard to do.
It is so hard to do. And amazed anybody can pull it off in this day and age.
The fact that there are those who do, and the reactions that people have, you know, just the joy, the wonder, again, Mandalorian season 1, end of the first episode, and you see the little ears, it's like, whoa, they're going there.
Yeah.
Like, and they kept that height. No one saw it coming. Well done. Like, you got the surprise.
Yeah.
And again, then Luke, it's like, rock on. It's just you know, Gen X dreams coming true. It's just, you know, gold star. End of the Breakfast Club on the field. So yeah, it's just like, yes. So
nice. You've got another interest that fascinates me, which is the Sea Scouts.
Yes.
So I'm constantly seeing your posts about it. I don't know that much about Sea Scouts, but one of the places that you've been setting up, you call them packs? I don't know what you refer to groups of Sea Scouts as, but is Half Moon Bay, which is which I'm very familiar with because I do the cartoons for the Half Moon Bay Review. My wife is the publisher of that newspaper, and so when I saw you were getting a crew, what do you call them? I don't know, but you're getting a group together in that area. I was fascinated by that. So tell me a little bit about Sea Scouts. What exactly is it?
So I'm in charge of marketing Sea Scouts nationally. So thank you for the question. I grew up in Sea Scouts. I joined in 1991, and it phenomenally helped me because I was a freshman in high school. The year before, I had just survived 2 near-death calls with Crohn's disease.
Oh.
And I was really high-strung and broken from a very traumatic experience from nearly having 2 horrible deaths. And Sea Scouts was a place where I could excel, where there were adult volunteers who cared about providing a safe opportunity for young people to learn how to boat, to have friends, to go on adventures, to dream beyond the horizon. And I grew up on the Griffin in Redwood City. I earned the highest rank called quartermaster. So if you think Eagle Scout, quartermaster is the Sea Scout equivalent for the top rank. I earned it while I was still in high school. And it was a great adventure. I believe in one of my first volunteers. His name was Don Blum. He just passed away. He was 96, and he offered what he called the blood bank theory. When you're a kid, you take from the blood bank. As an adult, you give back because you want others to have those experiences. So I wanted to start more Sea Scout ships because we have to grow. And places where we don't have Sea Scout ships. So I thought it'd be, again, having low goals, I thought it'd be a good idea to try starting one in Foster City and then one in Half Moon Bay because we hadn't had Sea Scouts in either of those locations. I thought it'd be good to have one on each side of 92.
Yeah.
So, because that way, families don't have to go far. In scouting, we believe that you should be like 10 minutes away from where you can drop your kids off or stay and volunteer and be there for your child, because we have lots of parents who volunteer as well. So we started, Foster City caught fire first, and I actually went from the committee chair to skipper with our recharter. So I'm now the skipper of that ship. So think Scoutmaster. I've never been a skipper before. I've been a Commodore and I'm on our national committee, but this is going to be fun. And in Half Moon Bay, you and your wife helped light that spark with getting an article out in the Half Moon Bay Review that got a person who's now the skipper of that ship.
Oh, nice. That's fantastic.
So the Half Moon Bay Yacht Club is the charter partner. The parent has a youth. Her daughter joined the ship in San Francisco during COVID. And she took the position that no parent should have to drive to San Francisco if they live on the coast, because it's a long drive.
Plus you're right by the water anyway.
Yeah. And in my, again, according to Don, we had never had a ship in Half Moon Bay. There was one for a hot minute in Pacifica, but they never, it was 1999. They didn't do the things they needed to last. The yacht club is so on board. We got great volunteers. We got parents who were engaged. I joined the yacht club so that way I could help. And no, we don't wear ascots. That's not.
I've been to the Half Moon Bay Yacht Club. That is not an ascot place.
No, it's like we're jeans and fleece jacket to stay warm, and let's go out and boat, and everyone's wonderful. And everyone needs hope. Everyone needs a community. Sea Scouts is a place for young people to go, and they can kayak, they can stand up paddleboard, they can learn how a motorboat works, and it can turn on the type of adults that you have. If you have a bunch of people who know how to do scuba diving, it's going to be a scuba diving focus. If you have a bunch of people who know how to do sailing, they're going to sail. Nice. That said, the yacht club has people who are have a little bit of everything. So that ship is just going to have such rich opportunities. We're going to do a training there. That's a leadership course to help give the youth tools for planning and communicating. It's an introduction to leadership skill, and the other purpose is to help give the parents who are volunteering an idea of how a healthy Sea Scout ship is supposed to run. And that's what we do. We're there to provide hope and opportunities so young people don't have to just be home alone, that they can go to a place where there are others who care about them, and they can have friends. Some of my closest friends were the guys I grew up with on the Griffin. And I want to be sure that there's a future, and that the youth of today in 2023 have a safe place where they can go and go kayaking and then grilled burgers afterwards.
That's great.
just easy.
That's great. Anything I haven't asked you about that you think the Succotash audience would be interested in hearing about, either you or your show? Or
You can expect to see us at some upcoming conventions. So we can post when schedules go live. So right now I can just say that we are planning to be some places in 23.
I'll bet.
And check us out for more. That if you want to learn more about Sea Scouts, you can visit seascout.org. If you want to learn more about the blogging that I do and soundcasting with friends, you can check out thelegalgeeks.com. We're also on, iTunes, Stitcher, and many other fine podcast players.
Yeah.
And, if you, need legal help, don't be afraid. There are so many folks, like if they have a legal problem, they'll just post on social media. It's like, you can look on your local bar association website. They have lawyer referral services. It's like, if you need help, go ask. Like, people don't seek out lawyers because they need someone for the bowling team. It's usually because something bad happened. And if something bad's happened, go find someone to help you. Like that's the most important thing. Don't suffer in silence. Go find someone to help you.
That's great.
So
that's great. I will have appropriate links on the blog piece that will go with this episode.
Fantastic.
And now, here's your host.
Thanks to Josh Gilliland for dropping by. You can hear a lot more of him over at the Legal Geek Soundcast. You can also read a lot more on his blog, Bowtie Law. You'll find links to all Josh's rich legal goodness at our show blog at succotashshow.com. We're running kind of long this week, so we will dispense with our usual Tweet Sack segment today. Sorry, Tweety. Instead, I'll just remind you that Tyson Sainer will be back in this very same Soundcast feed next week with episode 345. And until then, if someone you know is itching to find something new to listen to, and a few choice samples might help them find their way, won't you please pass the Succotash?
You've been listening to Succotash, the Comedy Soundcast Soundcast, with your host, Marc Hershon. Brought to you by Henderson's Pants and... Imagine your company's name right here. Rate us and review us at Apple and Google Podcasts. Find us on the web at succotashshow.com, on Spotify, on Stitcher, on iHeartRadio, on YouTube,
On SoundCloud.
and wherever fine soundcasts are streamed and
or downloaded.
Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Succotash Show. Like us on Facebook. Email us at marc@succotashshow.com. Or call into the Succotash Skype line at our toll call number 818-921-7212.
That number again is 818-921-7212.
You can also upload clips from your favorite comedy soundcasts directly to us using our direct upload link at hightail.com/u/Succotash. Succotash is produced and engineered by Joe Paulino through the auspices of Studio P Sausalito, the home of the hit. Our hosts are Marc Hershon and Tyson Sainer. Our musical director is Scott Carvey. Our booth assistant is Kenny Durges. Succotash is executive produced by Marc Hershon. Until next time, I'm your loyal booth announcer, Bill Haywatt, reminding you to please pass the Succotash. Goodbye. This has been a Succotash Patch production.